All right, we are here. Rabbi Dr. Tirzah Firestone, thank you so much for joining the ACJ this evening. You've been very impactful upon me with your book, Wounds into Wisdom. When it came out, I was very excited about it and taught it at my synagogue. I was at Temple Emmanuel at the time. I don't know, you're a gadol bador in my opinion. Um, so thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
I'm really delighted to be here. I was just telling Rabbi Andrew just before we started that when I first caught wind of ACJ, like, what? Who are these people? What is this organization? Like, I had to study. They sound just like me. Where I was just kind of aghast and delighted to learn about you. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, and it's because I've read you. That's why we sound like you. So, um, so tonight we're really talking about the question of trauma, intergenerational trauma, what it means for uh, humanity writ large and Jews in particular. It's a constant conversation right now, especially um, uh, when it comes to the way people frame talking about the ongoing horrors in Israel and Palestine. Um, and this is your specialty. So I would love to just hear you kind of start out explaining what intergenerational trauma actually is. Like, where does this concept come from? What does it mean? And trying to help people ground themselves in something a little bit more tangible.
Okay, good. That's a good. I have like three things I want to say at once. First of all, I really believe that our greatest work in life is autobiographical. I think Carl Jung would agree with that. That we're coming to solve the riddles, to untie the knots that we were handed by our progenitors, our ancestors, and that is really the case for me. I'm the product of my mother was a narrowly escaped Nazi Germany in 1939 on the Kindertransport. My father was uh, present at the liberation of Bergen-Belsen. He was an American who was sent overseas. Anyway, and as a rabbi, I worked with Rabbis for Human Rights well, starting from 2007 for about 10 years, going into the West Bank, not into Gaza. And Andrew, what I saw there was, I I think it stimulated such cellular memory for me.
Yeah.
It was so incomprehensible how it was that most of my family had died in the ovens, and how could this be going on? I saw things that didn't. I couldn't connect the dots until I realized, oh, this is not geopolitical. Oh, this is not religious. Oh, this is nothing but in a sense, psychological, psycho-spiritual trauma. This is something that we haven't worked out. It's in our blind spot that that the Jewish people would have watchtowers and checkpoints and barbed wire and walls, separation barriers with graffiti on. Like, it was a reenactment, a recapitulation that was incomprehensible unless you understood it through a psychological lens. So I went home,
Mhm.
and after standing on the pulpit and just trying to making, ad nauseum sermons that people just, I don't know what they did, my congregation did with them. Um,
At least they didn't kick you out for them.
no, 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 they didn't. I think that they were shocked, but
Yeah.
you can only hear so much. Finally, I went back to get my doctorate in trauma psychology and depth psychology to help me understand what is going on at a personal level, at a family level, at a collective level. So let's just start from the beginning. First, to invite people, when I teach about these things, I say, let's really be grounded.
Mhm.
I invite everyone to have a glass of water, because
Yes.
each of us who are listening, we each have traumatic precursors in our families, in our personal lives, but also certainly if you're Jewish, and even if you're not, you have some form of oppression or pain, suffering that went on for your relatives. So when we drink, when we sip, when we come back into our bodies. And I'm going
Mhm.
to invite you to do that through the next little while. Please, l'chaim, to life.
Yes. I am.
Take a sip, and it's very important for the nervous system. So, first of all, trauma. What does that mean? Trauma in Greek means a wound. We all have deep wounds. And the reason really that we're having this conversation at all, and the reason we have these terms that have entered into cultural parlance, like ancestral healing or intergenerational trauma or collective trauma, all of those terms are fairly new,
Mhm.
because beginning in about 2015, there was striking data, scientific studies that came out first out of animal laboratories, and then multi-generational studies that came out of human studies on families, demonstrating that the extreme events that we go through as human beings can be evidenced, can be, not always, but can be evidenced in our physiology.
Mhm.
And more specifically, they don't change our genetics, but they affect how our genes are expressed. We can go into that a little bit more. This is the science of epigenetics. Now,
Mhm.
if trauma is the residue, let's say we talk about traumatic residue. So you go through something terrible and it kind of lingers in you. You got that bad feeling in you because it overwhelmed when you had that, even if it was a motorcycle accident, God forbid, or someone violated your boundaries. It overwhelmed, in the moment, it overwhelmed your coping capacities. And so it could have lasting effects in your nervous system. And more so, as we will see, can be, now it is evidence, this is evidence-based science, that it can be, not always, but it can often be transmitted to future generations. Those methylations on top of the genes, the changes that in the genetic expression can transfer to future generations.
Mhm.
So I like, there's a definition I really like, which I think is useful, by a colleague of mine, Dr. Gabor Mate, who's also a Holocaust survivor. Some of you know him and may
Mhm.
take issue with him because he is really a trauma survivor, and you feel that in his field, a Holocaust survivor, rather. Trauma is not what happens to you. It's not just the facts that happen to you, it's what happens inside you as a result of what happened to you.
Great.
Okay. And
Yeah.
that lands a little bit differently, right? Because
Yeah.
we've all been deeply affected. I'll just say, let's put this into ACJ context. We've all been just reeling over the events of the past 2 years since October 7th, at least, if not
Yeah.
earlier. And depending on our family history, depending on where we sit, depending on what we came from and what our ancestors lived through, it may, the facts on the ground land differently for each one of us. You may be extremely disturbed. You may be, okay, it's just, might be matter of fact.
Sure.
I'll just say one more thing, and that's intergenerational trauma, to finally answer your question, Andrew. The unhealed residue of extreme life experiences that can be transferred to future generations. And I want to be not so Ashkenazic centric here. Jews all over the world for centuries and for millennia have experienced uh, all kinds of things: discrimination, scapegoating, forced conversions, public humiliations, also the Shoah, of course.
Mhm.
And these influences shaped our collective experience, our ethno experience. They shaped our narrative, our psyche, our collective, our shared ethnic psyche.
Mhm.
Um, so, for example, you can understand this, the experience of constantly being on the run and having a suitcase always packed. That's what I
Sure.
knew about my answer. They always had a suitcase in the closet ready to go. Being an unwelcome minority. Now, of course, this is not exclusive to Jews. Let's get
Right.
that very clear. Living in constant poverty and societal oppression, right?
Hmm.
That constitutes complex trauma that certainly will imprint on the psyche of the family and may imprint itself on the biology of an entire group, of an entire ethnicity, in the form of collective trauma, which is that shared experience that shapes our identity.
Yeah.
Now, all of this is precursory to a conversation about why we're in such, as I was saying before, we're fatutzt. That's
Yeah.
this crazy Jewish word that's not really a word. We are
It
really
is now.
we're all vibrating because, but the last point, then I'll let you talk. I think that the inheritance of unsafety, of not
Mhm.
belonging, of is one side of the coin. The other side of the coin, and there's always two, at least, may be incredible. That inheritance is also gave us street smarts, and it gave us flexibility and resilience, and all kinds of we're brainy to get to survive, and we're loyal to each other, and all of that. We're tribal because we help each other
Mhm.
to save each other. So there's gifts as well as scars that come out of these intergenerational trauma residues.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the multi-layered approach, which I really, really appreciate. Um, one of the things you said very at the beginning is really sticking with me. And you were really trying. I feel like you were really trying to highlight this by saying um, it can express it this way, right? It doesn't, and not necessarily, and not in every instance will trauma be kind of recapitulated down the line in the same way.
Right.
And then that combined with the Gabor Mate quote, which I don't want to repeat because I will butcher it. But what it made me think about is that part of what ends up being integrated as trauma in the individual is the true like objective experience of something harmful, but then also the way that that experience is interpreted by that individual
That's right.
impacts that internalization, right?
Absolutely.
And of course, in some ways, we learn how to interpret what's happening to us from our family, from the people that raised us, from the people that taught us, right?
Yes.
Um, and that's one of the pieces that has always been very interesting to me about how intergenerational trauma gets spoken about in Jewish contexts, because folks that grew up in Jewish institutions and in the kind of like institutional educational system were taught how to think about Jewish history, right, in a very through a very particular lens,
That's right.
and um, it makes me I often wonder. Um, it's a chicken and an egg question, right? How much of the response people has comes from them inheriting it from the past, and how much of it comes from them being taught that that's the proper way to respond, or how do these, and maybe it's not versus, maybe it's like how the two things work together. Um, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that.
So hard to tease those apart, isn't it?
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
it was useful. It was very useful to the enterprise. Well, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. It was very useful to the uh, I don't like to use the Z word. I just find it
Okay.
it's just so incendiary. But the whole enterprise, the whole experiment of Israel, which was it was just burgeoning when I was growing up.
Right.
Something to be proud about, something that gave context to the Shoah, to the Holocaust, something that gave meaning to all the horrendous suffering and death. It gave purpose, it gave a sense of context and frame, and it also, in a more cynical way, it rallied it rallied funds and resources and focus. It funneled Jewish diasporic Judaism toward this enterprise. So it was useful, a useful
Mm-hmm.
tool, right? Psychologically, it was also useful to help people know that there was something to be proud about, something that we can stand for. We could, I write in Wounds into Wisdom. I was raised, in an Orthodox, very Orthodox background, post-Holocaust day school background, and I'll never forget every day during the 6-Day War being called into those 6 days. Hundreds of children in the auditorium praying and crying and praying for the soldiers and praying for the survival of the Jewish state. And I really believe that that's what won that war. It was my
Mm-hmm.
prayers. It was our prayers. We
Sure.
all had
That's
sort of skin in the
yeah.
game, right?
Right. Yeah.
So the educational piece is, we're all looking at pedagogy. We're all looking at education and how what we're taught shapes us. But what we weren't taught is that we have a choice. We always have a choice to look at it this way or look at it that way. Well, actually, we do. In Talmud, it's Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim. You can look at
Yeah.
it this way. You can look at it that way. They're all words of the living God. And that's really important. Of course, we have lost that liberalism and that plurality of late in the Jewish community because we unfortunately have started to castigate each other for each other's viewpoints. And it's been, it's been very, very polarized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, to that end, at the same time, um, where do you see the most common misconceptions of this concept of trauma or intergenerational trauma playing out? Um,
Yeah.
and I don't even just mean only in the Jewish world. I think that this is um, I know people from throughout the different areas of my life, some of whom aren't Jewish, that the body keeps the score has become a very talking point book, and I'm not suggesting that that it is incorrect. I don't know anything about the book. I haven't read it, but it's a hot topic in general right now,
It is a hot
and
topic.
so I'd love to hear the places where you've heard it maybe misused or abused as a concept to help people understand where
Sure.
the lines are.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, saying that we are the victims of the greatest trauma ever committed by humankind is, that can be used. It can be used. Our history can be used as a colossal excuse. Now, the stories that I was told for my book, Wounds into Wisdom, the narratives are full of the most unbelievable tragedies and losses,
Yeah.
but their survivors surmounted them because we are, to use that word, we're protean beings, where we have this gift of awareness, we have a gift of neuroplasticity, we can change anything, we can use anything. We have, that's, I think, the divine quality, the alchemical quality of the human mind. So what all the great traumatologists and neuroscientists in the world over, agree on, and many of them, by the way, Bessel van der Kolk is not, but many of them are Jews who have lived through terrible things, but they agree, and Viktor Frankl, I think, at the forefront of this, that there is always choice, and once we can bring our awareness to bear on what we're carrying in our systems, we can change ourselves. So Yael Danieli, a great Israeli traumatologist, says awareness, I'll just quote her, awareness of our trauma processes, of our transmitted intergenerational trauma processes will, not can, will inhibit transmission of pathology. Awareness, when we get aware of our trauma processes, it will inhibit transmission of pathology to succeeding generations. That's very hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we can exploit everything. But when, for instance, Holocaust trauma becomes sacrosanct, then we know, oh, we can't touch it. Then we know, wow, we've stopped learning from the suffering of our ancestors. Like very recently, I'm not going to mention names, but very recently I went to a lecture of one of the great encyclopedic scholars, American Jewish scholars, who actually said that when a Jew used, and nobody had used this word in the audience, it was a Q&A after a big lecture, hundreds of people were there. When a Jew uses the word genocide, and presumably anyone else either, it erases the fact of the Shoah. It erases our history.
Mhm.
Right? Like, wow, I was like, really? As if we have a trademark or like a copyright on that word? Like, what is going on? But of course, it helps me understand, it helps all of us understand why the G word is another one I don't use ever. I
Mhm.
don't use it in mixed company because it's such a like a landmine.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't, it takes people way off course. So then we can't hear. But why it's such a landmine is because we feel we get identified with our trauma to such a point where no one else has ever experienced genocide. And it belongs to us. It becomes ossified.
Yeah. Which, I mean, the thing that really that discourse drives home for me that um, it makes me really sad, frankly, is that for so many people, that's the only hook they have into what it means for them to be Jewish,
Yeah.
is to have this identification with this sense of being oppressed, sense of suffering, sense of um, having an exceptional history of that suffering. And that's the whole thing to them. That's all they got, which is not a particularly positive um, relationship with Judaism or Jewishness, right? Like, what becomes of that 3 generations on if that's all that's taught,
That's
you
right.
know? Um, and so I'm now trying to figure out which question I want to ask because I have two that will take us in vastly different directions. Um, I think I'll come back to this, the one I was just about to ask, but the experience you had of being with someone that's brilliant, right? That knows so much and so much about this topic in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Um, being unable to parse the reality in front of them because of that like landmine experience as you put it, and something that's been very striking to me, that someone like and it's probably because I overvalue the intellect, but it's almost as if in my experience people who are the most intellect driven seem to be struggling the most with overcoming this hurdle. And I wonder if you've noticed, and when I say this hurdle, I'm speaking very vaguely. This hurdle of identifying with their trauma is really what I mean, or identifying with a conception of trauma. And I wonder if A, that's your experience as well, and B, if you have a sense of why that might be.
I don't know that it belongs to the intellectual or the intelligentsia. I don't find that. I find it is very, listen, I get letters from all over the world like, you didn't say this and you not thinking about us. And why are you thinking about Palestinians and not Israelis? And what, like, I think is very hot. It gets very hot, quickly charged for everyone, for professors, academics, for lecturers, for I think that we haven't understood enough about our wiring. I mean, now we're getting into, one of the things when you start to study how the brain is wired and just a little bit, I know, so I'm so much not a scientist, but a little bit about how the brain works, you understand that there's all these different chambers in the brain. And our old brain, our brain stem fires in such um, uh, rapid fire, 0 to 10, protective, defensive. You're looking at me the wrong way. You're said the wrong thing. How dare you? You're invading me. You're attacking me. oppressing me, all the things, I'm in danger, you're threatening my existence. So we jump from 0 to 10 so rapidly. Now this is around the Shabbos table as well, and so it's in the, it's wherever we in the boardroom. It's where we are I call it limbic lava. The limbic brain, the emotional brain, just fires like a volcano and becomes, all the lava starts to erupt. And we can't, when that happens, when we get emotional and hot like that, our rational mind, our rational brain goes offline. They're mutually exclusive. So especially in a group, once that happens, and there's like a contagion that happens. I write about this in the book. There's, in a group, just like someone yells fire, as soon as you hear that, your existential, your survival mechanisms kick in. You're hyper aroused and you want to survive. If there's a fire in the auditorium and you want to make your way, we see this all the time on
Yeah.
the news. Someone fires a shot, boom. And it's very rare when someone says, oh, let me think about this. Was that really a real shot or was it not? Was it, let me parse this. I don't want to get trampled. No, you just run because you're hyper aroused. The animal instinct is to save your life.
Yeah.
And that's a life-saving mechanism, but it precludes rational thought. So in a shul, in an auditorium, in a lecture, when someone says incendiary words and that contagious thing sweeps through the crowd, it's very hard to get it back. And
Yeah.
when you, and for someone to just, I heard someone very skillful stopping this in the middle of a lecture and saying, let's just take a pause and take a breath and ask, what are we all so afraid of right now? And there was no fire, no shot fired. It was talk about Israel. What are we so afraid of? She just asked that question, and it was like, oh, immediately it jumped us into our cortical function. Like, oh, you're right. I'm really scared right now. What is going? I noticed. I witnessed. I have some insight. That's a different part of the brain, but it's not. We don't. Many people don't have the skill to get us into that meta view, into like jumping out. Oh, what just happened between us? Oh, I just got really scared and nervous and I got aggressive with you. And let me think about that for a minute. It's a different part of the brain that does that.
Yeah. No, I love the metaphor of it being like yelling fire in an auditorium or a theater. I hadn't thought about it like that. Um, and I it's leading me to wonder, um, and there may not be a good answer to this question. That like I think if we want to get really kind of binaristic, right? Is that there's a conflict going on around what to be afraid of right
Mhm.
now and particularly in the Jewish community.
Yeah.
And one one side of this conflict does seem to immediately go to an existential fear for like actual physical safety, right? And then the other side, the one that I think I'm now trying to articulate what I'm afraid of,
Yeah, good.
um, is um, is the is being a bystander for something horrible being done both in the name of Jews and Judaism as one part of it, but on the other part of it, just being a bystander at all, right? Like growing up with a very and not just growing up, but really developing a very deep connection to prophetic Judaism and the messages of the prophets, and this idea that you should not stand idly by. That I could be that is the fear that's driving me, right? And it makes me wonder if like this is coming from two different experiences of trauma.
Mm.
from two different sources of trauma. That like one would be like being faced with this present moment, a particular trauma that either happened to me or to in my family has led me to this in one way, and for those other people, it has led them in that opposite direction.
Wow.
This,
Okay.
yeah, I'm like barely. I think I think I'm making a little bit
I
of
think
sense.
you're saying I will. Your second fear is closer to the vest. Is I fear not deducing, making the connection, making sort of gleaning my meaning, my purpose from this, and doing what is right, doing what I must do in the face of what we're living through.
Yeah,
That's a fear that I might miss the boat here.
right.
I thank you so much for articulating that. It's so much in the back burner for so many of the people that uh, that I that I listen to in my practice. Also, I think, by the way, just living in America right
Yeah,
now as a Jew or as any human person who cares about not being silent as people are being smuggled off the streets into unmarked cars. So
yeah,
it's like, wait a minute, they did that to us. They did that to my people, or
yeah,
not. But I heard about that, and I swore inside I would, as a kid, I would never stand idly by. Those kinds of deep feelings. I thank you for articulating that, and I want to go back to our. Let's go back to our Jewish upbringing. I mean,
mm,
most people have been to a Passover Seder, and in the
sure,
Passover Haggadah, very much, um, it's very, I think, very salient to what we're talking about. In the Haggadah, there's this line, and many of us sing it. Om dimaleinu lachalotenu. That in every generation, they were out to get us. They stood
yeah,
up against us. They wanted to kill us. They wanted to destroy us. They wanted to eradicate our people. And God came to our rescue, and you saved us. And in every generation, we're talking about an intergenerational inscription of a very strong messaging, right, to young
yeah,
people. Of course, there's all these jokes about it. They're out to get us. We survived. Now let's eat.
sure,
But it reinforces that exceptionalism. It reinforces our entitlement, our isolation in the world, our unsafety in the world, all of that. You can put that over here in the same darn Haggadah, in the same holy book, which is, I think, a compilation of many of our paradoxes as
mhm,
Jews, because there are so many contravening values. Uh, there is another trope altogether. That's halach ma'anya.
mhm,
This is the bread of affliction. And you stand and you at our Seder, we open the door and we say, this is the bread of affliction. Let all who are hungry, all who are oppressed, come and eat with us, because we get it. We
yeah,
understand. We feel it. We know what you're going through. We went through it. Dafka, because of our history, we're inscribed with this ability to know, to feel, to empathize with you.
yeah,
So side by side in one book, there are such tension. And as Viktor Frankl says, we have to wrestle with. We all have choice. We have to choose. What are we going to choose? What's the meaning we're going to choose here, and what are we going to do about it? And that's, I think, the spiritual struggle that many of us are going through right now. What do I do with the shame I feel? And I don't see this in public very often. I
mhm,
hope you don't get nasty letters, Andrew. I feel enormous shame. There's so much unspoken shame that my people are doing this. We have become these persecutors. We've become the aggressors of what we
mhm,
ourselves suffered. How is that possible? So, what do I do with that shame? What do I do? How does it motivate me? What choices do I make? Um,
yeah,
no answers, right? Each of us
right.
has to struggle with these
So
questions.
the looking at that question too from from the lens of trauma and inherited trauma. Um, do you think, in some ways, uh, the particular modes that individuals inherit affect how they choose or what they're more likely to choose? Or do you think that there is some, like, I'm almost trying to like do like a
I
psychological
know,
map. You know what I mean?
I know, but I don't think there is any formula because
No.
I've seen such paradoxical responses. People who had every right to get vengeful, every right,
Yeah.
saw their kids killed in front of them, and they were the ones. By the way, not all Jews. I'm thinking about this incredible doctor, a Palestinian doctor who lost his wife and three kids, and just right in front of him. And he wrote a book. I shall not hate. Uh, I think I don't think there's a formula. I don't. I think that that's where our God-given right to free choice is. What
Yeah.
choice are we going to make?
How how do you, in this time when you enter into conversations, because I'm sure you do quite regularly because you have like a community with people who you can see are so stuck in a like that kind of limbic part of their brain, just projecting some kind of traumatic narrative that they're living constantly that is probably not actually physically happening to them.
Right.
How have you, in the past couple of years, helped people overcome that stuckness?
I don't think we're doing real well,
Yeah,
actually. I mean, I feel like it's really I mean, I don't want to be negative, but I've stopped trying to change people's minds unless they come to me with wanting to know more and asking questions. Like I'm in
yeah,
pain. I know that there's other choices to be made, like to not hate, to not castigate entire people, to not dehumanize, to not get into my. There is something else that needs to be said in the wounds into wisdom. There are the things that I learned from these people, and I deduced from them what were all the common denominators that these people
yeah,
said, and and a lot of them spoke about having to disidentify with victimhood, disidentify, like, no, that's taking me down a rabbit hole. As a people, as a person, as an individual, I don't want to associate with that. But a lot of times my victimhood, my our history of victimhood, which is undeniable. I mean,
right.
nobody, like, unless you're insane, the facts are there. We went through 2,000 years and more of unbelievable scapegoating and victimization. But that has become, in a sense, I mean, in psychological parlance, a kind of inflation. And it has flipped into a kind of supremacy or a kind of specialness,
Mhm.
chosenness, so there's this two sides of one coin again. And I don't really want to go with either one of those unless I am asking, what am I chosen for? What is the Jewish people chosen for with all this horrendous history? Like, what are we chosen for? Are we just continuing the chain of suffering throughout generations, which is what it looks like we're making that choice now, so that generations of Palestinians and Arabs and people around the world hate us, and creating a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that just is the biggest tragedy of I can think of in my
Yeah,
lifetime? Or am I saying, no, we're chosen to be a light. We're chosen to be a light to the nations, to the world, to use our suffering to empathize, to include, to feel for, to bear witness the suffering that's going on now, and to stop that chain of suffering. And I just l'chaim. Take
yeah,
take a drink because it's so it's it's
yeah.
it's painful stuff.
It is. It's hard, and it also. for me, one of the ways, like that's where my mind goes to, right? Is like what is this piece of chosenness? And um one of the ways that I have been wrestling with it is by trying to actually set aside the concept of peoplehood entirely. And which isn't to say that we don't have connections with Jews via just the core constituent reality of Torah being what makes Jews Jews, right? Like we have a historical wisdom and text basis, but rather than or focusing on that, which is a significantly more um, abstract and less tight sense of bondedness um, than how peoplehood is usually formulated, which would then lead, the way that I see it normally formulated, often has to do with a sense of shared trauma, right? And then often has to do with a level of almost metaphysical responsibility
Hmm.
that you and I would hold for some reason for what an Israeli soldier with the worst of intentions is doing in Gaza right now. That somehow you and I are in in in
Yeah.
in a metaphysical way responsible for that more so than like a non-Jewish American, right? So like I'm trying to set for myself and for others set that idea aside so that because our contexts of traumatic inheritance here in America, um, and the pools we are swimming in of the trauma created for all kinds of other people in America that some of our ancestors may have participated in as well, right? As white Americans, um, is enough for us to deal with, than also having to loop in what's going on over there as our responsibility. But uh, this all stemmed from you talking about chosenness, and I think that is uh, for me such a context-based question, and that
Hmm.
to some degree, each Jewish individual, but then very much so each local Jewish community has their own chosen role to play within that
Mm.
the milieu they're within,
Beautiful.
um, based on Torah,
That's right.
um,
And many
and mhm,
congregations are really struggling with that right now. Obviously, I'm
yeah,
sure people who are listening are feeling, whether they're feeling at odds with or disappointed in their Jewish leaders or their rabbis who are not coming out strongly enough, or they're coming out too strongly, or whatever. There's this tension right now. Who are we and what? But all that's, I think, creative, a kind of creative tension. We all
mhm,
have to, we can't really stay mum right now. There's too much going on in the world. Uh, and too much going on in the Jewish world to stay mute.
yeah,
As you're talking, Andrew, I'm thinking I'm not a Reconstructionist rabbi, and he was not my Rebbe by any means, but Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, who talked about Judaism as a civilization. He didn't
mhm,
talk about Israel,
mhm,
as far as I remember, but he talked about the liturgical cycle. He talked about the music and the literature, the language, the text, the accrued wisdom, and the ethical system that came down to us from the Hebrew prophets. All that stuff, um, so beautiful. It wasn't about Judaism, and I think sorry, it wasn't about Israel, but it was a Judaism that was so rich, and I think he talked about the Jewish Judaism as a civilization in the 50s or early 60s.
it was the 30s.
No, really?
Because
Seriously? That early?
once yeah, yeah, it was the 30s because once you get to the 40s and 50s with him, it's all about Zionism.
Oh, oh, you're
I'm
ruining my
sorry.
fantasy here. I'm
No, his
sorry.
early stuff is great. Yeah. In the 30s,
Oh
that's yeah,
dear.
what you're describing is what he wrote in the 30s, but
Oh,
once it got to the 40s, it
okay.
really became about Zionism and nationalism.
I stand corrected.
Yeah.
Mordecai Kaplan? Really?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Oh,
know it's that. Yeah.
okay.
Um, but no, but you're completely dead on about where he started.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
which
think,
I think is
that was
yeah,
just a coalescing and a gathering and a co-opting of public attention after the Holocaust, and
yeah,
it was just a kind of almost an easy mark.
yeah. It was there, and it wasn't. It was also, um, it's where the money was. Like you said before, it was so much money was flowing into that project of turning everyone's focus in that direction. Everyone being American Jews, and then eventually it was also for American interest in the region as well. Um,
Right.
but yeah, um, and that is, I wonder, or not, I wonder, I know, um, a big part of this project for me, the ACJ, um, came about as I was discovering these hidden histories of American Judaism before that term,
Wow.
right? Which are, the some of the people I've interviewed before you, like Marjorie Feld, focused on this. Matt Berkman focused on this. There's another really wonderful book that came out just a couple of years ago now, by Jeffrey Levin, about how that all occurred. Um, and it feels like its own kind of trauma, right? To have an entire history erased on purpose,
Mm.
um, from from the collective of American Jews, in order to further this other expression, as in a mutually exclusive way. And I
Wow.
thinking about zooming out a little bit from the individual trauma to that concept of collective trauma. If we think of that as a form of collective trauma, how how would one go about the process of looking at it as a process of healing, as opposed to a process of um, uh, so the word that's coming to mind is retribution. I don't, that's not the word I want to use, but I think you know what I mean. That, like, it's not about having to, like, fight back, and not about having to um, necessarily be at war with and a system that feels like it created a traumatic reality, but instead healing that trauma. How does that work on the collective level?
Oh, I don't think this is uh, a, a short enterprise. I think that this
No.
generation, this is talking about generational, this is door to door. This is what's beginning now, I feel, in America, which is very heartening, is the diasporic consciousness, the a sense of uh, reclaiming the soul of Judaism.
Mhm.
For lack of, in poetic terms, maybe that's a little bit exaggerated, but seeing it distinct from the ethno-nationalist project,
Yeah,
wherever that's going to go. I don't think I'm not naive. I think there is, as one of your guests, Atalia Omer, said, there's this, I think she said, or maybe I'm putting words in her mouth, that there is a teshuva process that we have to go through just to claim and own what we are doing as a Jewish people right now, how our defense system took over and became what we're doing to another people. That is not going to go away. We can't just say, oh, well,
sure.
that's their problem and we're going forward. And I don't think
Yeah,
that's unrealistic, but that sense of pulling apart, teasing apart these different identities, and where do I stand? I stand with what I learned of the Hebrew prophets. I stand with, I'm making a choice. I want to be a halachma anya Jew. I don't want to be a omdim aleinu l'chalotenu Jew. I don't want to be like they're always trying to get us and we're always at the mercy of, that takes me down the wrong kind of rabbit hole. I don't like how I feel with that. I want to step into my largesse and my expansive identity, even if it is dreamlike. I don't care. It's like, even
yeah,
if it is, even if I go down as an idealist. That's okay. I want to be that kind of Jew. Um, I think we're at a very big juncture in history. I never, ever thought we would be here. I didn't think we would ever be here. And I feel, I feel sad because I'm at the, I sit at the feet of my teachers who many of them gave their adult lives, made aliyah in their 20s and went into human rights and went into the rabbinate and formed congregations and feeling now, wow, what happened to the dream? Where did it go?
Yeah.
And was it squandered? Was it wasted? Did I squander my life? Like all of that, these big questions. I don't believe so. I feel so proud of those teachers and those activists and those, the heads of all these very idealistic organizations and nonprofits. That's what makes me proud as a Jew. And it takes me out of the shame that I'm feeling, is just to think about that. That's sacred to me.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sure I've gotten off track, but
No, I mean it's funny because we started with you talking about working with Rabbis for Human Rights,
yeah.
which had a major impact on me as well.
Oh, really?
During my first year of rabbinical school, I interned with Arik Asherman
Oh my
during
gosh.
it was the last year that he was at Rabbis for Human Rights, as the like split was happening.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, as we talk about prophecy in the prophetic tradition, I have never met a human being that so fully embodies what I imagine a biblical prophet to be like
Totally. He's
as Barak
Eliyahu. He's
Asherman.
Elijah. Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Just someone who is so single-mindedly committed to
Yes.
a dream in which everybody from the river to the sea has equal rights and freedom. And I had not ever experienced a rabbi speaking as he did about these things
And also, can I add, putting his body on the line,
constantly. And
because he's,
literally right now, I'm sure he's out in the field in the West Bank doing protective presence work.
yeah, standing up against these rather rabid people, settlers, who many of which whom are wearing kippot and have payas, and I don't understand that, but they're conking him on the head with metal pipes, and
Yeah,
he's been in the hospital so many times and arrested so many times, and but people like him, that to me, those are the prophets.
yeah.
He's the
No,
embodiment.
absolutely. And how do you see our relationship like to people like him as being a conduit for healing? Because as we're talking, that's like the original question was like the question of communal healing from a sense of trauma. And I think we landed somewhere where that is a that located not necessarily in him as a human, but in what he represents through what he does is that feeling to me. And I wonder if you have any wisdom about what that might mean, what how that relates to the collective.
I think it's so much of both, and it's not bifurcated. It's not rejecting. It's not entitled or won over. I'm not more enlightened than the people that believe in that way or this way. It's like, we're all in this together. And if we can come to our wits, you know what, this might be, do we have a minute? We can just do a very quick, a quick exercise.
Please, yeah,
We have the time?
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
please,
good. So many of you know, I'm hoping that you've heard of tefillin or phylacteries, and that's the box that typically a man, but now many women and many people of all different identifications wear as a way of coming close to the divine. It's a box on the forehead, and there's a knot in the back, and there's leather straps, and I think you know what I mean. Um, this is an ancient tradition that many people think actually arose from Egypt.
Mm.
to wear an amulet with sacred words, because we have the Shema Yisrael that we wear in that box, right? So try this. I know this is maybe something you've never done here at ACJ, but
No, I'm excited.
okay. So take one hand and just touch yourself here where that box might be, and this is connecting with your prefrontal cortex. That is the new part of the brain that is all about insight and mindfulness, witnessing, and empathy, intuition, all those good things. That's what lights up when this part of the brain lights up when we're in empathy and in insight. But with our other hand, we touch ourselves here at the nape of our neck, where our hairline ends at the top of our spine, that little notch in there, and that's where the dalid, the knot, goes. Okay, so we have ourselves one hand in front, one hand in back. Close your eyes for just a minute and take a breath. And imagine, just imagine, be childlike here, that you could draw a line transecting from one hand to the other through your skull. You can maybe feel little pulses, or just imagine. When you can imagine a line going through, you're connecting literally your new brain in front, the brain of insight and rational thinking, to the back, the primal brainstem, which is all about survival. You're saying my brain has both, and all, they're both necessary. This is what we do when we put on tefillin, when we is saying, I'm activating both parts of me. I need both parts of me. We need all parts of the Jewish community who think in different ways. And I hope that I can be someone who is can use my rational brain, even when I'm in fear of my existence. You know, just doing that, rest your hands, is a very calming experience. And the next step is to go to the very center of that line. This is from my teacher, Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi, blessed memory, to imagine a little tzaddik self, a little Buddha self, sitting in the very center, a center of that line that you've made, and being very serene in the midst of all the turbulence in the world. There's part of us that is unified and sitting in equilibrium and equanimity. Amen. May it be so.
Man, that was beautiful. I love that. Uh adopting a tefillin practice was something that was very important to me at one time. And for the past couple of years, I just like haven't been doing it. For whatever everyone's struggling with in different ways. And that was very, very moving for me. So thank you so much
You're so welcome.
for sharing that practice with us, and maybe helping people understand the purpose of that ritual that often seems so um, alien to us folks in America today, that it actually is trying to connect us more deeply. Um, Thank you so much for such a wonderful conversation.
Likewise, Andrew.
This was beautiful and amazing, and I hope that everybody that was tuning in came away feeling a little bit more um, out of their limbic system, in their uh, prefrontal cortex, and able to cope with where we are right now. Before we go, I want to just tell everyone how to follow Rabbi Firestone. Um, TirzahFirestone.com. You can sign up for all of her mailing lists there. Um, if you want to buy her book, Wounds into Wisdom, which I highly suggest. It's a really incredible collection of stories of people that overcame their trauma to help other people also overcome their trauma. You can go to bit.ly/wounds dash into dash wisdom. And you can follow her on Instagram at Tirzah Fire, Tirzahfire. Thank you once again. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.